Hello, this is old Mr. Kent of MrKent.com, and I took off from a very poor place because it took me forever. Once I got in the air, I had to stop and wait to get satellite coverage. So once my GPS was okay, well then I took off and took this flight. I just wanted to go take a look at a construction site that I had looked at a couple weeks ago and see if anything had changed. So that's where we're headed for on this particular flight, and then I also wanted to finish up a story that I started in the previous video, and I'll put a link to it. And it was about when I graduated from college. Then I had to find a job, and I got a job at Boeing in Seattle, and so. They hired me as a draftsman. Now, when I was in high school, I loved mechanical drawing, and I got straight A's in that, of course. And then, and by the way, they were hiring everybody that wanted to go to work there. If they wanted to, well, I don't know how they decided, but anyway, they had this 12-week course that they had set up to train people 8 hours a day for 12 weeks, how to be a draftsman at Boeing. And so it was, it was just, you didn't have to know anything, and they put you in the course, and if you did well, then they gave you the job. And if you didn't do well, I don't know what happened to the poor guys that didn't do well. Anyway, so that was the course that I was in. And like I said, I'd been in high school mechanical drawing, and then when I went to college, because I was going to become a shop teacher and teach drafting, they taught me what's called descriptive geometry. And it's, remember now, back in those days, we used T-squares and triangles, all right? So it was a way to take a look at any object from any angle once you had a 3-view drawing of it, and so then you could look at it at any angle, and that's what descriptive geometry was, how you went about that. And by the way, remember now, this was back in the days before computers, and there was no computer-aided design or CAD programs, and nobody had ever thought of them. And so Boeing had this huge computer that they used for some special, designing a wing or something like that, and it was computer operated. But anyway, so they hired me, and I my first day of the the first day of the course, the instructor, who was a really nice guy, he had us fill out information cards with our name and all that stuff, phone number, and everything they needed to know. And then I took mine up to the front of the class, and then went and sat down. It wasn't long, maybe a few more minutes, and he called me to the front of the class, and he told me, he said, you'll never be able to do any drafting if this is the kind of lettering that you do. Because I had just hurried to get it done, because I knew he was in a hurry to get things done. So I apologized and said, I'll try to do better after this. And so, because when you do drafting and, you do it by hand, well, then you hand lettered everything, and you did it very, very neat. So he kind of he didn't scold me. He just said, you're just going to have to do better than this on the drawings. And so, but the thing is at the end of the first week, during the lunch hour, he took me to see his supervisor, because he had found over the week that I knew everything that he was teaching these guys. And he took me to his supervisor, and he said, this boy, or this guy, because I was like 21 or 22, this guy needs to be one of our instructors. And his supervisor said, well, that would be fine, but you have to work at Boeing for 2 years before you can become an instructor. So that idea went out the window. And so another week went by, and he was trying to do what he could, because he knew that I did not need to sit there for 12 weeks. And so I don't remember how many weeks went by, but it was probably at the end of the second or third week. he had me placed on a job out in the engineering building where I would become a draftsman for Boeing, and it was in the 707 program, which back then they had the 707, but they were still doing design stuff and so forth, and so put me there, and I had a good supervisor there, really nice guy. And so apparently he had been told that I knew a lot about drafting. So the first thing he did was he gave me an assignment to design a wooden block that would fit between two pieces of metal at an angle, and he showed me the drawing that I needed to use to match up my wooden block. And so I don't remember how long it took me, but it wasn't long until I came back to him and showed him the drawing. And then he said, okay, now I want you to make the same thing out of aluminum. And, you don't bend aluminum at a sharp 90-degree angle. Every corner has to be bent in a rounded angle. And so I did that. And so they had me designing things. And it was really cool because a couple weeks after I had designed that piece of metal, he brought it to me and showed it to me. And it's always nice to see your design, what you designed, is all put together and everything. And by the way, I saw that concrete truck going down the road, and I thought, are they pouring concrete? Because I've been watching this place as I ride by on my e-bike. Well, anyway, so I ended up designing things for the inside the cabin of the 707. Not designing, but not as an engineer. Although I did show a lot of their engineers up there where I worked. It was actually called passenger accommodations, which is inside the cabin, and they had me teaching some of their engineers how to use descriptive geometry, and so I worked there. Well, actually, I started in January and I worked until August of 1965. And one of the things they found out that I could do is the planes that fly across open water like the ocean, they carry a life raft in the ceiling compartment. And so if the plane does ditch and people are still alive, then you can pull that life raft out the door. And then also, they had me designing brackets to hold the escape slides. If you've ever seen how when a plane more or less crash lands and they open the door and all the people slide out on that little inflated thing, I designed a lot of the escapes, the brackets to hold that mechanism on the bottom of the door, and so that all they had to do was clip it to the floor and open the door, and it would automatically fill. So if you've seen those in airplanes, well, I designed the brackets that held those to the door, and of course it was not that easy because all the doors were curved at an angle to match the curvature of the airplane. So it was fun. And when you see a KC-135 flying over, that's the old 707, and I designed parts for that. Well, anyway, I worked there from until August, and then in August I wanted to find a job at a school because I had graduated in the middle of the year, and there weren't any jobs available that I wanted very bad. So in August I started looking for a job, and I found one. Well, actually, I'll go. It looks like I'm running out of time. So the next story I'll tell you about finding my next job. But that's the time I spent at Boeing. When I quit, they promised to give me a raise if I would stay, but I told them, nope, I've got to go, and because I already had another job. So anyway, that was my story of working at Boeing. And as I land, I want to thank you again for watching my videos, and God bless.